Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome back to Atari ST A to Z, a series of short playthroughs of Atari ST games, some of which I grew up with and some which are new to me. Today is one of the former. Today we're looking at a game called Zoltar. This was a 1988 public domain release developed by Francois Lionnet. This was originally developed as one of 3 showcase games that were included with Mandarin Software STOS BASIC to demonstrate what the base package without any expansions was capable of. Specifically, the game demonstrates the possibility of a shoot-'em-up built on scripted enemy waves, plus the ability for players to create their own custom content for the game. Now, there's some slight differences between this version and the one that was included with STOS, or at least the version that I've got anyway, in that the music is slightly different in particular, and there may well be some other little differences as well. But this is a version of Zoltar that was released into the public domain rather than just bundled with STOS. So presumably Francois Lionnet had a bit of time to make a few little refinements here and there before releasing it to the public. Anyway, let's go play Zoltar.
Okay, here we are with Zoltar. PD distribution by Goodman PD Library with the permission of Mandarin Software. Now, as I said in the intro, this is probably best known as a game that was bundled with STOS, the game creator, which was a programming language similar to BASIC that had a lot of stuff that was good at handling sprites and graphics and sound and that sort of thing. So it made programming games particularly easy, but it could also be used for all sorts of other things as well. It's a very flexible programming language that proved quite popular, particularly among developers of public domain software. And Zoltar was included with STOS. Excuse the noise outside. Zoltar was included with the STOS package as one of 3 showcases of what the platform is capable of. Sorry, I got a very itchy nose today. Yeah, so the other stuff that was included in the package was a game called Bullet Train. It was very similar to what's it called? I know it is Loco, but I'm sure it's got another name. It's like an old arcade game where you drive a train from a side-on view and you move it up and down tracks and that sort of thing. And then there was also Orbit, which was a Arkanoid clone. Zoltar is a shoot-'em-up with a few interesting little twists along the way. So let's take a look at how it goes. For starters, it is mouse-driven. So you control the craft at the bottom with your mouse and fire with the left button. Whoops. And you die like that. And your aim is to clear out the various waves of enemy ships. So each wave has 9 enemy ships that follow a pre-scripted pattern. And the reason I know that is because this game also offers the facility for you to create your own waves. Now, in the grand scheme of shoot-'em-ups on the Atari ST, this isn't an amazing one. You'll notice that the frame rate isn't great, the controls aren't super responsive, the music gets a bit tiresome after a while, and in terms of mechanics, it's pretty basic. There's no power-ups, there's no sort of bonus points or anything like that. It's just all about clearing out these various waves, and you'll also see that if you die, you have to start the wave all over again, rather than picking up where you left off, which makes it quite difficult to make progress. But in terms of a basic showcase, no pun intended, of what STOS was capable of, without any of its expansions, without compiling it into machine code, this was a solid piece of software to show you the sort of thing that you could do. And the nice thing about it was, as with things like type-in listings that we've talked about on this series before, the nice thing about having example software like this bundled in with a programming language or a development environment is that you can pick it apart and figure things out about it for yourself. And indeed, that's the exact reason that Zoltar and Bullet Train and Orbit were all included with STOS. Because although all 3 of them were relatively advanced examples of what was possible to do with the package, they were all suitable ways of learning some little tricks that you could do, and then perhaps applying those into your own projects. Alternatively, there was nothing stopping you taking those games as a basis and then building your own things out of them. Like, there was nothing stopping you loading up Zoltar and adding your own enhancements to it. So there was nothing stopping you running it through the STOS compiler to make it run a bit smoother. There was nothing stopping you making use of the STOS Maestro add-on to add sample sound to it. Hell, if you're feeling adventurous, you could even add STOS 3D into the mix and add some polygonal graphics in there as well. Although that would have probably really brought the frame rate to a complete crawl. But yeah, as I say, although this is far from the greatest example of a shoot-'em-up that the Atari ST had to offer, particularly from a performance perspective, it does demonstrate what you could achieve with STOS, and that is all it was setting out to do. One thing that did always upset me about STOS a little bit was, in a lot of their promotional material, and indeed in a lot of their example graphics and stuff, they made use of this really cool looking sort of bright yellow dog character, but then they didn't actually include any games that featured him with STOS, which is a real shame, because there's like a screenshot on the back of the STOS box that shows this character with like a really cool interface and so on, and all of those graphical assets are included with STOS, but no actual game to make use of them. Which is a real shame, because seeing those screenshots was one of the things that excited me about STOS in the first place. So having a bit of experience with the programming in Atari BASIC, I also knew that realistically I probably wouldn't be able to achieve anything that looked that good straight away. But the possibilities excited me. I tend to find with packages like STOS and even modern stuff like RPG Maker and so on, the possibilities of what it's capable of often excite me more than what I end up actually creating with it. I just think the existence of this software is really cool, and seeing what other people come up with it is really exciting to me. Of course, there have been times that I've made use of these pieces of software myself. Like, I'm very fond of playing with RPG Maker and Visual Novel Maker and that sort of thing, and I spent a lot of time with STOS back in the day as well. I even made a finished game with it. It was called Zap, and it was basically a boss rush game that wasn't very good, but I was proud of it because it was technically a complete game. It had a series of boss encounters that got gradually more challenging as you went through, followed by a bonus round where you had to avoid meteors. And it featured terrible hand-drawn graphics by myself, and some of the included STOS musical assets. And because I wouldn't have been that old at the time, being able to create something that substantial, that was technically functional as a video game, that was hugely exciting. Particularly the fact it was on the Atari ST. Because the move to the 16-bit era marked a noticeable change in the way that computer operating systems worked. So whereas all of the 8-bit computers booted straight into BASIC when you turned them on, so you could immediately start programming with them, with the Atari ST and the Amiga, if you wanted to do some programming, you'd have to actually load a piece of software to do that. You'd have to load up ST BASIC or STOS or something like that if you wanted to do programming. And it was just like an extra layer of resistance, basically, which made it a lot more difficult for people to get into programming. And so getting something running on the Atari ST felt like much more of an achievement than getting something functional going on the Atari 8-bit. I mean, practically speaking, it was the same amount of work, and it was probably more effort to get something working on the Atari 8-bit, because BASIC didn't have built-in commands for things like manipulating sprites and so on. You had to do all that with like machine code routines and poking memory addresses and all that kind of thing. Whereas in STOS, you said, put a sprite here, pull it from this memory bank, use this frame of animation, and so on. It was quite easy to do something like that in STOS. But just something about having it on the ST made it really exciting. This game is really hard. And I mean, part of it, I think, is the performance. Because although the mouse controls are reasonably responsive, there's still a sort of a slight delay in moving around the screen and so on, and being able to respond to incoming shots and that sort of thing. It's a little bit tricky in that regard. The fact you can only fire one shot at once as well is like a very retro throwback that makes it quite difficult. And like I say, it's not the best shoot 'em up on the ST by a long shot, but it does serve its purpose, which is to show what an unexpanded version of STOS can do. Throwing some sprites around the screen, providing all the built-in functionality you need to create a basic arcade-style game. Now, probably the most interesting thing about Zoltar we'll have a look at in a moment, which is the fact that as well as having all this game included, all this monstrously difficult game I should say, it also allows you to create your own levels. So let's take a look at how that works now, because I'm clearly not getting past level 2 anytime soon. So if we're going to create a phase, first of all, mercifully, it turns the music off. And what we do then is you set alien attack, first of all, and we draw the curve. And this pattern is how the aliens are going to enter the screen. So use the mouse to draw, press the mouse key to finish, don't move too fast. Place the mouse at the beginning of the curve, press the mouse key and draw. So we click, and then we just start moving the mouse around, and that draws a line on the screen. And you'll see that there's sort of colour flowing along that line on the screen. And the faster you move the mouse, you see that's reflected in how the colour is moving across the screen. So not only is it recording how you move the mouse around, it's also recording how quickly you move it too. So if we click that there and finish there, we can then press release aliens. Press the mouse key to release one enemy spaceship. You can wait for as long as you want between each ship. You have 9 ships to release. So what you do here is you click the mouse and that starts releasing the enemy ships. So in this way you can send them out a little bit at a time, and then bring a few more in. And then a few more. And there we are. So that is the rate that they will come in. So once you've done that, you can also choose your alien ships. So you can pick specifically which enemy ships you want to see in there. So if we want 3 of the UFOs, 3 of these things, and then 3 of these things. There we go. Set the fire rate. Input aliens fire rating from 0 no fire to 100 constant fire. So the default value is 50. Let's make it a bit easier for ourselves. Let's turn that down to 10. And then return to the previous menu. You can then try your game. And you'll see here is our attack wave. moment later, the next 3 should come up. There they are. Now, obviously, we've created a very easy level here. But there you go. That is the basics of creating a level in this. The other thing you can do is if you're going to choose alien ships and choose... never known how you pronounce this. Magedon? Or it's obviously supposed to be something to do with Armageddon, so I guess Mageddon. Choose Mageddon. Please input Mageddon fire rating from 0 no fire to 100 constant fire. Let's try 25. Please input number of hits. Mageddon will resist before exploding. Default value is 5. So as you might be able to guess, the Mageddon is a boss. And again, you can draw the curve for that. So if we bring him in, it'll be a little bit quicker moving around and make him a bit harder to hit. Let's swoop down and try and get you. Swoop. Oh, click the mouse accidentally, but never mind. Alright, if we then return to the previous menu and then try our game, we've then got the Mageddon following our attack pattern. And in order to kill him, you have to hit him in the blue ball at the top 5 times. Very difficult to do, especially at that fire rate. So if I go back here and set his fire rate to 0, and let's say we take 2 hits to destroy, we can then go back, press try game. He's still firing, but I assume that will make things a little bit There we go, I hit him twice. And there we go. So, you can't make him completely super easy to defeat, but you can make him easier. But what you can then do, you can then save your attack wave to disk, and then play that whenever you like. Alternatively, you can load any of the levels from Zoltar and play them as you see fit. So if we say phase 6, you can see one of the later stages from the game. Rather rudely, they come up from underneath in this one. So obviously, as you can tell, this game is trying to pay a certain amount of homage to Galaga, but it is different from Galaga in the sense that all of the attack patterns are pre-recorded rather than determined by any sort of randomness. So that's one thing that sort of makes this game a bit interesting. And as I say, even though this doesn't perform in the best way, nor is it the best shoot 'em up on the ST by any means, there's plenty of good ideas in there that you could use in your own game. There's nothing stopping you from making use of the stuff that is in Zoltar, or indeed using the Zoltar program as a basis for your own piece of software. There's nothing stopping you making use of, for example, that attack wave designer there to make your own shoot 'em up that's a bit more complex. And then, as I said before, running it through some of the other STOS add-ons like the STOS compiler to make it run more smoothly and that kind of thing. So a lot of flexibility to do there. And it's something that people who are a bit older and more experienced than me, yeah, they've really got a kick out of back in the ST era. STOS was a lot of fun. Like even for someone inexperienced and young like me, it was fun to play with. And then there was some really elaborate stuff put together. Like if you consider the game that we looked at last week, the Isle of Glass, or whatever it was in Welsh or Celtic or whatever that language was. Yeah, that was all made in STOS. And more than likely didn't use many of the expansions either. You used the Maestro one for the sampled sound, but aside from that, it wasn't doing anything that you couldn't do with the base package, certainly. So anyway, that is Zoltar, a showcase piece of software, a showcase game for STOS, the game creator, by Mandarin Software. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.